Welcome in, Stripe Show Podcast. We've got this thing recording, which will air on my podcast next week. If you haven't downloaded it, please do. We had, this week, Scott Hamilton was on there. And Scott joined me from out there in California, who works with a number of players, including one of the guys that he works with, and we talked about, Lanto Griffin, who is actually leading the tournament right now. So timing is everything. So whoever you work with next week, they will be leading the event heading into the final round next week. That's the kind of effect that we have on the Stripe Show Podcast. So thank you for being here. This is number 3 of the in-studio series that we've been doing in here, and it's been a lot of fun. So I thank everyone for being here. I know some of you have been in here for the first 2. The feedback's been good. J.C. Deacon was in here, head coach of University of Florida, and then we had Marcus Potters in here. We did all things putting, which was great. We're going to go deep into short game with one of the best short game teachers, I think probably the best short game teacher, in my opinion, in the country. And then in March, to finish up the in-studio series, we have Dana Dahlquist, who I know you know very well, West Coast guy as well. Dana, friend of mine, excellent teacher, works with a number of guys, including Bryson DeChambeau, and we're going to get into a lot of some full swing discussion with Dana. So we've got some seats available for that. If anybody wants to continue, you like what you listen to here, and you want to join us in March, it's the Sunday before the Players' Championship that week. So Dana will join us, and that'll complete the in-studio series. So this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate everybody being here, and you guys are going to get a lot out of this discussion here with a guy that comes to us from Scottsdale, Arizona. He's in Florida because he was down at the PGA show, so we got in front of this, and he was kind enough. He said, I'll drive up, and I'll do this, and I'll fly out of Jacksonville the next morning. He's a PGA Tour winner, and I think the top short game coach in the country, Parker McLachlin. Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
we really
thanks,
appreciate
Travis.
it.
Thanks, everybody.
So before we get into all of this stuff that we're going to talk about, and we're going to give you plenty of time to ask questions, which have been great, honestly, to this point. The questions have driven a lot of this conversation, so there's going to be plenty of time for that. But before we get into it, you're down at the PGA show. I didn't make it this year, first time, and I don't know how long. But anything new that we should know about?
I would say one of the more interesting things was, force plates are tough to kind of find, and I'm trying to figure out a way to measure things out of the bunker. I think the bunker is probably the biggest struggle for amateur golfers in general. And so getting a better understanding of the bunker, I think, is high on my priority list as to how to teach it and how to better communicate. And so at the PGA show, they've got these insoles that are like 2 millimeters thin, but they sense pressure. And so now you can be able to tell where your pressure is going. And that's a really, really good thing, I think, and it's like $600 versus $25,000 for force plates, you know? So that was probably one of the cooler things. A lot of neat, just kind of training aids. I was talking to some guys today about a training aid for the bunker, learning how to use the wrist properly. Yeah. And then you put it on the other hand, learn how to pitch it properly, which we'll dive into in a little bit. But the PGA show, I don't know if you guys have ever been. It was my first time last year. It's like so much energy. It's so big. It's absolutely wild.
It is wild, and it's really gotten better. Like there for a while, the PGA show, when I first got into the business, first got to Florida 25 years ago, it was a lot of fun. I mean, there was everybody went, every manufacturer. Then it kind of lost its steam there for a while, but now it's like, it's picking back up again. Yes. And I think the biggest reason is because golf consumption, amateur golf play is at an all-time high right now. Thank God. I mean, this is fantastic timing in building the studio, and everybody loves golf, and we live in Florida, and they're nuts about it, which is fantastic. Now, professional golf and viewership, and those numbers, that's for another discussion. We talked that about on the podcast on different days. But as far as play, it's been good. So it's cool. The PGA show, there's definitely been the momentum. And you talk about pressure, and you talk about left, right, and how you're engaging the ground. That's something we're going to get into a lot today, and how you engage the ground and what that means on various different types of shots around the green. Yep. And so we'll get into that. If you don't follow Parker, you need to. Short Game Chef is his handle on Instagram. He also did a series that he'll talk about towards the end, and it's really an excellent series of videos about a lot of what we're going to talk about here today. So if you're like, man, I really want to watch that in greater detail, He'll point in the right direction to that. And we're going to talk about a lot of those shots, of course, in depth. But on your Instagram, you one of your first statements, and I put it down here. It says, "Short game chef Parker McLachlin," and he says, "Modernize your short game." Okay, so let's start with that. What does that mean? Modernize your short game.
Well, things have evolved from, let's say, 30, 40, 50 years ago. The course conditions have evolved. I got to spend some time with Jack Nicklaus and Lee Trevino, and I asked both of them, I said, what was the highest lofted wedge you had, and what was the bounce on that wedge? Both of them had a 58-degree lofted wedge with 17 degrees of bounce.
Wow.
17 degrees, right? Not one major manufacturer makes a 17-degree bounce wedge today. 14 is usually the highest. So 17 degrees, that just tells you the playing conditions that they had back then were so much different than what we're finding right now. So the grass has gotten better, agronomy's gotten better. And then probably I'd say about, maybe 10, 15 years ago, Pinehurst, when all of a sudden they started shaving off the sides rather than US Open having long rough. And then that became very in vogue. And so all these sort of fall off areas now became with cut really short. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, if you got 17 degrees of bounce and you're trying to hit off of that tight lie, it's going to be really difficult. Yeah. So now guys are playing with 4 degrees of bounce. A lot of guys on tour use 4 degrees of bounce.
4 degrees.
4 degrees versus...
On a 56?
No, on their 60.
On their 60.
So versus 17 with Jack and Lee Trevino.
So, okay, 60 degrees, 4 degrees of bounce.
Yep.
What's their 56?
That's where it gets a little bit interesting. Someone like Rocco goes the same. He goes I think it's 10 in each of his wedges. He likes them the same. Someone like a Max Homa goes 4 degrees in his 60, but then he goes all the way to 14 in his 56. So two totally different schools of thought there. I would say that if you ask Bob Vokey, which I have, he says basically low bounce in your highest lofted wedge. It's sort of your get out of jail free card.
Yep.
And then a higher bounce in your 56 degree. And that would be a nice complement so that if you found yourself in a really heavy sanded bunker, you can use the higher bounce wedge to help you get out of that bunker. If you found yourself on a hard pan lie, you could use that 60 degree to help slide that club underneath.
Is 4 acceptable just for, let's say, an average amateur player? Is 4 suitable? Would you say go to 8?
8 minimum.
Okay. 8 minimum for a 60.
8 minimum, I would start there.
Okay.
And I wouldn't even go to 60. I mean, like Rocco's still 56 degrees, his highest lofted wedge. My son's 11 years old, and I won't let him have a 60 degree until he's at least 16 or 17 years old. Matt Kuchar, I spoke with him yesterday actually too, and not about this, but I talked to Matt about, we've kind of grown up together, but he doesn't, his son Cameron is just kind of applying for schools right now. I don't think he still has a 60 degree. 56 is his highest as well.
So why is that? What's the...
It's like, I think for the junior golfers, learn to use the lower lofted wedge first. And learn how to hit the variety of shots. And then if you ever do go put a 60 degree in your bag, it feels like cheating.
Magical.
It feels like, really easy.
Yeah.
But I would say, I always like to have people start their bag from the top. So if you can hit it over, let's say 235, 240 yards, you can have a 60 degree in your bag. If you hit it under 240, I'd be like, there's no reason. You need to stack the top of your bag with, hybrids and whatnot, 5 woods, 7 woods, and use this as you're going to need more distance with this guy, not as much around the green.
So let's get into some of the techniques, and we can get lost with a lot of different variables of short game. And what I want to try to do here and really accomplish, and we talked about it before, is really just kind of have some baseline shots, and then you have your baseline shots, and then you have your variables that you can kind of mix and match as far as shaft lean or club face angle, etc. But we were talking, and I think this is a great way to kind of set the stage before we get into the different types of shots. And you said you kind of look at it as a family of short game. I think it'd be kind of cool for you to start there.
Yeah.
Left arm versus right, the family of short game.
Yeah, so the way that I've been sort of just teaching people for the last 5-6 years, I've started to just learn and see the tendencies. And what I've sort of come up with is that for there's two families of shots. So one of them is going to be putting, bump and run, and a pitch shot. They're all sort of in the same family. So if I'm going to hit a putt, it's going to look like this. Quiet legs, a lot of movement here. If I'm going to hit a bump and run with a 9-iron, ball position is going to go back, handles a little forward, and I'm going to move this way. If I'm going to hit a pitch shot, you can see those two motions are very similar. If I'm going to hit a pitch shot, now I've got a little higher loft, ball position goes slightly forward. Now I start to have a little bit of knee movement, but I start to make a slightly longer backswing, a little bit more dynamic on the way through. But those three motions, they're all in the same family. They're very similar to each other. Now, when we go into the bunker and into the thick rough and hitting a flop shot, it's completely different. They're not even related. They're not even related. So the way that I describe it, like a bunker shot would look like this, right? Here, that way. Flop shot would be almost the same. There's a couple different ways to play a flop shot, but flop shot's still this way to this way. And then out of the rough, it would, like if you imagine in thick rough, it would be up, more that way. And so if I were to just to say, let's simplify it even more, it would be left hand, your lead hand would be the flop shot, the bunker shot, and the shot out of the rough. And the trail hand would be your putting stroke, your bump and run, and your pitch shot. So what does that sort of look like? Well, I would say it's here to here would be what I would want to see. If you're just sitting there talking on the phone, conference call, whatever it might be, got your AirPods in and you're just like, all right, I'm gonna ingrain my bump and run shot, or I'm gonna ingrain my pitch shot motion. I would want you to feel like your left hand is on your sternum and left hand and right hand work back together, pivot back, pivot through. So everything's moving together this way to hit that pitch shot. Obviously, you don't need as much if you're going to hit a bump and run because you've got lower loft. And then when we get into the flop shot, the bunker shot, and the shot out of the thick rough, now it's going to be in my lead hand, and it's going to go hinge where I feel like I make a 90-degree angle. I'm going to unload that hinge, get it back to close to neutral, and then I'm going to rehinge on this side and get it to 90 there. That would be the essence of that family of shots. So they're two completely different shots, two completely different families. And I think understanding those two families will help you on your shots around the green to not get confused and be like, oh, I've got to hit this 5 yards. Let me go with all that type of movement. It's like simplify it, right? We don't need all this and then all this and then all that to then hit a 5-yard shot. I would much rather see you putting stroke with some good dynamic movement with your upper body. For the most part, most amateurs that I see don't have enough movement here through their torso, through their rib cage. There's not enough pivot going on. We get real lazy. Everybody does, right? We just up, down, and we just throw it. And it's like, that's the one type of a shot, but off of a tight fairway lie, if you're going to try to hit a standard stock pitch shot, it's really difficult to time it out and go up and throw it that way and not have any movement. So anyway, that's sort of the two families of shots. And I think, for me, it's just like once you understand that it's going to be one or the other, it helps you get a little bit more clarity and simplify the shot that you're about to hit and have that commitment to hitting that shot. Because short game, you can.
So
you can
one of
get
them's
lost
like
in
right arm, almost connected to the sternum,
Yep.
Kind of deal.
Correct. That would be the pitch shot.
And then the other one's a little more of a swinging kind of action, wrist hinge with the left.
Yep.
Kind of deal.
And so if people are really struggling with their chipping, like I will have them start with a 5-iron, and I'll just say let's hit a couple of shots where we get ourselves in a place where it feels like we're going to putt it, right? So if I was going to be in my regular 5-iron grip, I'd be here. But and most of my clients when they come to me, I'm like, okay, let's grab a 5-iron. And they get here and it's like, okay, chip it about 20 feet and it goes 50 feet, right? So what I want them to do is I want them to understand I got to get all the way up in here, take all the power away, and make a putting stroke. Once I learn how to remove all this power and speed that I'm getting from my feet, the width of my stance, farthest away from the ball. Once I get in here, I get this handle up. Now all of a sudden I've taken all the ball speed away. Now I can use this to actually make myself a putting stroke.
So the sternum, it's almost like the torso is almost like the engine per se, right?
Yep.
It's in
That's
how
your
it's
engine.
moving. Okay, so within those two families, all right, and I'm gonna ask the first specific question about a shot.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what's if you had to say amateur player, you have to know how to hit this shot around the green. This is number one. What would it be?
I would say, I would say that you would want to find your stock shot. Your
stock shot.
Like a stock pitch shot. So whether it's with a 52 degree or 56 degree, or if you're a better player, a 60 degree. But you got to find that stock shot. And that stock shot's going to sort of be, from about here to here.
Let's talk about that technique.
Yeah.
Let's establish that. So, so you would probably hit it with a 60.
Yeah, 60 or 56.
Okay.
And it's sort of, it's like, and we'll dive into this as well, but to go to the point of talking about the different families, what's become really in vogue right now is crosshand chipping, right? Matthew Pavon, Matt Fitzpatrick, Kevin Stadler, Chris Couch, Vijay Singh. I think I'm missing a couple. Kevin Kisner did it the other night.
Yeah, Kevin Kisner, yeah.
Yeah. But crosshand chipping has become really popular, chipping/pitching, because it looks like a putting stroke. Matt Pavon went to it 10 years ago. He putts cross-handed. You pull that up?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
So if I make a cross-handed putting stroke motion, that's sort of the essence of what the shot is, right? And
so this is cross-handed here?
This is cross-handed with a little bit more, he's probably trying to spin it just a little bit. I'll kind of get out of the way. But so that would be, a phenomenal position to get into, right? So shaft parallel to the ground. I think it goes maybe a little bit longer, but nice club face, right? The club face isn't like, you don't have to get that club face working open on the way back. You really don't. One of the favorite drills that I do with my players at every level is feeling like this thing's in your belly button, and you pivot to the back here with your body. Now all of a sudden you look, and I push this out here. The face angle matches up to my spine angle. It doesn't need to open up to hit a stock pitch shot. Now, if I'm going to hit a high one, then I'm going to start with it open, and I may twist it open more to get more height. But I just don't want it to be confused, right? The type of shot that we're trying to hit.
So, stock shot, just so we're all on the same page here. So that's cross-handed. I don't know if you can see that. Here's
that's left hand low. Yep.
And so when you do go left hand low, it's hard to get a lot of wrist cock. And what you'll notice is that his club shaft is in line with his lead arm, and the club head is just slightly above the wrist. Fair?
Meaning what?
That the wrist hinge is probably maybe a little more passive than what most think from a stock shot perspective. At least that's just
correct
from my experience. And this is where the conversation we can take this is where, stock, it's like, you get a lot of this, right?
That's the wrong way to do it. Yes.
The club head gets way above your wrist. And so if you can just imagine like that straight line, and like that straight line with the club head just slightly above. You like that for a stock type of destination?
Yeah. And a lot's been made about like, hey, do I keep the club head outside my hands, on my hands, inside my hands? There's so many ways to do it.
Sure.
Right? I'm good with it being barely outside your hands, right on your hands, slightly inside your hands. This is slightly inside of his hands.
Sure.
Keith is slightly inside. Stricker slightly inside. There's a lot of guys that are slightly inside. That's okay.
Yeah.
But the reason that Matt Pavon hired me this offseason was not to work on his chipping. It was to work on his thick rough and bunker game. So totally different motion, right? So his pitching, he's like, I don't even want to touch it right now. Inside of 30 yards, I'm good. And I'm like, well, you're the first person to ever hire me that didn't want help with that. And so he said, I want help with thick rough, because he was trying to do this crosshand motion out of the thick rough. Now, so what does this crosshand motion do? It gives you a lot of width, and it allows that club to sort of stay on a real shallow arc into the golf ball, right? So imagine off of a tight fairway lie, that's no problem. But the second you get some Torrey Pines rough in there, it's drag, 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 and then I get to the ball. So we're starting to work on getting this motion going in his rough game and his bunker game. Because he was too much this way in his rough game. It was too, you can kind of see the width here, right? Look at the angle of this shaft and my hands, right, and my arms. So this would be wide, and then this would be narrow. Really difficult to do this cross-handed, and that's why guys are doing it. Guys are using this shot cross-handed because it doesn't encourage you to hinge it that way.
And so here he is now conventional. So this is normal grip.
This is from a little further away.
Further
so this is
away.
about 50 yards.
So you can see how that club head gets kind of working more up and down with that wrist cock.
But you can watch. The best thing that I want you guys to all pay attention to is how much he moves his body.
Yeah.
Even for that short little shot, he's moving his body a lot. And you'll see for the longer one, this one here, watch how much he rips through with his body. I mean, his chest is pointed far, far left of target on the way through. That's how much he's going through it. And I think if we transition a little bit into sort of awkward yardages, because like 50 yards is a very difficult yardage, what I see most people doing at 50 yards is getting to about here and being like, uh-oh, I think I'm gonna hit this too far, right? And then it's like stop and slow down, and then your body never moves. So if you can find a way to sort of shorten that motion in the backstroke, right, and find some structure here, then you're encouraged to go as much as you want on the way through. Because I don't want any of my players to feel like they have to slow down.
So here's another one. This is Rocco Mediate, who Parker has spent some time with, and
this guy's a legend.
I'm not sure.
I don't know if you guys follow him on Instagram. He is amazing.
I'm not sure if it's the stogie or the bare feet that gives it away, but
no, he's got these like Jesus sandals.
Oh, he's got
on.
okay, yeah. There we go. But watch again, kind of staying on the stock shot, right, where we kind of we're not getting a ton of we're turning the chest, club head just above the left wrist. Watch where he kind of takes us back to Parker's point. It looks wide. His hands are kind of away from his chest.
Now pause that right there if you don't mind. Can you pause that?
Yeah,
so you
right
can
there.
still see there's pressure going into this back foot, right? There's still pressure going there. So a lot of the stuff of like get your weight forward and stay there, I found that doesn't work quite that well, because what happens is if I just get forward and stay forward, I get to about here and it's like I can't push anymore towards the target. So I start pushing up and I start pushing back, and that's why I start hitting back here. So I would much rather, like Rocco right there is a great example of shifting just a little bit of pressure, not much, just barely, into this trail foot so that then he can actually move through it and go forward. Now, if you stack all that weight forward, most of the time, unless you're a really good athlete and you're just like, I'm just going to really stay there and just going to be like this, most people will go, they'll push backwards. That's just the way it goes. It's like equal and opposite reactions, right? So it's like, if you're pushing here, you're actually going to be pushing yourself back and away from the golf ball, compromising your strike. So yes, we need to make sure that we have an understanding of where our low point is. I don't want to set up to my driver looking like this, right? I mean, I do want to set up to my driver looking like this, but not to a pitch shot, right? I don't want to set up looking like this to a pitch shot and then offset it by, well, I'm just going to set a bunch of weight forward. Now all of a sudden it's this way and you back out of it. It never works out great. So it's understanding how to get this spine in the right spot. I mean, a lot of the stuff I do is setup, right? Setup. So get the spine in the right spot, weight position in the right spot, feet are close together. And then from here, it's like, okay, well, you can grab it like a putter, you can cross-hand it, and then it can be a motion where I'm feeling like I'm pushing my way through as I'm rotating this. This is my engine. But the more that I rotate this, more my pressure shifts forward.
What do you like for the sternum? Do you like it right over the ball?
Yeah, I would say it just depends on the height I want to hit it.
Okay.
So obviously the lower I want to hit it, the more that I'm going to start there. So So now my sternum's more here. The higher I want to hit it, my sternum's now more here. So I'm gonna enter the ground slightly behind the ball to get it to go up a little bit higher. Stock shot, I'd say just slightly off your left heel.
Yep.
And that's kind of like, as long as we don't look like this, off your left heel is a great spot to sort of start.
And so that's where full swing and short game is different, right? And where short game's its own animal, like he was saying, the driver is, you want to get here. You want to get tilted. And for a lot of my students, you've heard me say, get a little tilt, and that gets you behind it, right? It's more dynamic. You know, I can turn, load up, more weight shift, I can go get it. Where short game, you're going to start leveling that out. And oftentimes, you'll see players, they'll kind of even, you'll see them like trying to drop that lead shoulder down.
Yep.
And so they get more level and sometimes even a little open, like the shoulders will just open a touch because that gets that sternum out in front, or on top and maybe a little out in front, and just kind of helps secure that low point a little bit, rather with the driver, even a 7-iron a little bit. That's where the two are very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
And I was guilty of it. I was practicing my driver a handful of months ago, and I wasn't practicing my short game. I was just practicing my driver, and I had 30 minutes in between a lesson a few months ago, and I was hitting some shots, and I'm like, wow, I'm just hitting 2 inches behind it every time. Mm-hmm. So I go over to the mirror that's right there, and I get set up, and I look in the mirror. I'm like, oh my gosh, I look like this. Not that I was trying to do it, but I just had no awareness because all I was doing was trying to set up to my driver, and then I get into a pitch shot, and I looked like this. So then I took everything more this way with my spine and my weight position. I felt like I was 95% on my front foot. Mm. I looked up and I'm like, wow, that looks dead neutral. Mm-hmm. But it felt way forward and way this way to me. So the feel and the real part of it, you always got to pay attention. I love doing mirror work and really, really working on the setup and mirror work. With ball position, feet position, I think the more that you're wide with your feet, the more you're able to create ball speed, which for some of these short shots, you can see Rocco's feet are fairly close. Mm-hmm. Most guys, if they're hitting short shots, the feet are fairly close together. It takes away the ball speed, right? And if you don't have ball speed, then you can actually give it ball speed on the way through. You can actually move faster on the way through.
It's kind of interesting, like when you really think about it, with a driver, you're trying to maximize ball speed, right? In short game, you're trying to slow it down. And when you slow it down, it gives you more control. And so I want to kind of spin this forward just a little bit, where to kind of bring this a little more relevant to where the chest is going. So like on the stock shot, okay, is everyone, we're saying ball middle, shafts,
slightly
forward, his sternum's, right over it. Now he takes it back and the wrist hinge is, there's a little, but it's just above the wrist. Like you can see there's some width there, but we're not really getting a ton of this. It's just above the wrist. And then from there, he turns his chest. Right, that's a really good stock shot. Ball speed's going to be minimal, controllable, where he feels like, I love what he said, it incentivizes you to go with it.
Correct.
Okay. Where in a stock shot, some of the mistakes we'll see
it would be at setup.
Okay.
It would be hands way forward. Okay. So now I've turned this 60 degree into basically a 45 degree. Turn it into my pitching wedge or 9-iron, right? So if I've leaned it 15 degrees forward, that ball is going to want to come out faster. Mm-hmm. So what am I going to be disincentivized to do? Move fast through it.
Yeah.
Same thing with ball position. Same thing with weight position. The more weight I stack here, the more down I'm going to hit on the ball is going to want to come out faster. So again, it disincentivizes you from actually moving through it as fast as you can. Mm-hmm. And for most people on these 5 to 20 yard shots that are so incredibly awkward, it's like, I want you to move through it like an athlete. I want you to move through it quickly. I don't want you to be sitting here and being like, get to the top and be like, oh my, this is going to go 40 yards, right? Hinge, usually as well. This is going to go 40 yards. Let me slow it down and then try to throw and get all the shaft lean out of it. So there's a lot of things that add to your ball speed at address. So it'd be handle forward, weight forward, ball position, feet, right? If I look like this to set up to the shot, doesn't it look like I'm going to hit it 100 yards? If I set up to this, doesn't it look like I'm going to hit it about 5? I want to be able to tell a story at setup as to what I'm going to do with that shot. And then backswing too, right? It's like longer the backswing,
a lot of
the
potential
hinge.
energy in that, right?
A lot of potential energy.
Big arm swing, a lot of accumulation in the wrists. You got to get all that out. And so what happens is your body starts stalling out, and then you start mishitting it. The low point varies because the ball speed isn't as such where you can go with it. So I just kind of put a button on this stock shot. I love this technique for a stock shot for an amateur golfer. Now there's variants to it in shaft lean, and we'll get into that.
Totally.
But for a stock shot, just being able to say, hey, club face, maybe a touch open, just conservative shaft lean, and then really training. I spend so much time in here with people to get this right on a stock shot. I mean, I won't move on.
Yeah.
And someone like, what are we going to do now? When we get this down, then we'll move on. I mean, we've got to get this structured so you can then turn and go with it.
And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to feel this connection between the left hand being on your sternum and the right hand being on the club for a right-handed golfer, and to feel like they both move back in the backswing together. Now all of a sudden I'm in a really good spot. Now I can attach this hand. This is where I should be.
Yeah, I love that.
So I've done it through my pivot. I haven't just done it through my arms. I haven't just done it through my wrists.
Yeah.
I've done it through my pivot. And I think that's the most proper way to do it. And one of the reasons why we do it that way, I had a great mentor in Paul Azinger, and he would always say to me, he's like, Parker, I don't trust these little fast twitch muscles in my fingers, but I trust the big twitch muscles, right? I want the bigger muscles to, they just go slower. They don't move quite as fast. These little guys go real fast, so you can always feel a little bit twitchy sometimes. So it's better to have the bigger muscles engaged.
And this is, and Rocco, he's this shaft. I mean, you can really kind of see the idea of what he just said. Like, what did you said you were?
Yeah, just
you put
pivot.
this here, yeah. So it's like you can kind of see how this is turn, and his shaft lean there is very conservative. I mean,
very conservative.
Stock shot, you probably want a little more than that. I mean, Rocco's nifty with.
Yeah, he's got a 56 as well, right? So.
But you can see, but just turn the chest a little to the right, wrist, club head just climbs just a little above the hands, and then watch the chest coming through. Just the engine, and it just goes with it.
Yeah, and so the one thing that we didn't really touch on are the legs. The legs are really important to stay quiet. We don't want a ton of dancing the hula, as I like to call it. Like, you can't be doing this, right? This no good. Any type of this motion, any type of drive, the knees buckling. I mean, I see that a lot. And so I think the quieter we can keep our knees, the better. I've sort of said that from day one. It's like, again, it should be more like a putting stroke, because you would never, ever, ever in a million years, if you're putting, go this way, ever, right? So it's much more like a putting stroke. I want you guys to think of a chip shot and a pitch shot much more like a putting stroke. And obviously, as we get further away from the hole, a little more dynamic putting stroke, right? Longer dynamic.
Any questions on, everyone feel pretty comfortable with that shot and what that's all about?
Travis, what distance do you consider to be a stock shot?
Well, it's a good question, because your rate of turn can vary, right? And so, like, you could hit that shot probably 25, 30 yards.
Correct.
If you picked up, this is your speedometer, so I could pick up the speed with my chest, or I could slow it down. But I would say, what would you say?
You could also
stock?
slow it down by opening the face.
Open the face, yeah.
So,
what would you say
I
conservatively?
would say 30 is 25 is like sort of hip high to hip high.
Yeah.
20 to 25.
20 to 25, yeah.
And inside.
Imagine, miss the green, kind of just, most greens are pushed up. I got to be able to build it. I need like TGL in here. I got to go full TGL. I got to knock this wall down and build it.
You can do it.
So this green pushed up, and, everything kind of, filters off, right? And so the ball tumbles down into these collection areas. And so it's like, okay, I got to be able to like lob it, up onto the green with a little bit of spin, and that's what we're talking about here. This is
without hitting a flop shot.
without hitting a flop or a bump and run, but 56, 60 degrees. medium trajectory, got a little spin on it, right? That's kind of what we're after here. Stock, miss a green, come off into a collection area.
Yeah.
When you're setting up right here, you appear to be setting up square. Did you advocate that, or do you?
Yeah, that's a really good
Love
question.
this, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
on the list here,
I
yep.
would say it's been taught to be open to start. But I think that for the most part, guys are starting square, and then on certain shots, they'll open a little bit. And then there'll also be certain shots where, you know, guys will shut their stance. Like if they're trying to hit it high, they'll drop that right leg back. Or you'll see this a lot when guys are on a down slope, right? So if they're like this, they will drop this right foot back to then allow them the freedom to not get this knee involved. But if I was just going to hit a high one, I would drop this back and I would be able to go this way and that way to hit it high. Now the reason I do that is because, and obviously this is not a stock shot, but I'm just talking about other ways of setting up. But the reason I would do that is that this becomes my brakes. So it breaks, and then I'm allowed to sort of pass this club head on the way through, and this knee gets out of the way. So it's not getting in my way on the backswing or the downswing. It just kind of gets out of the way, and then this front one. But that would be a reason why you would see guys set up closed. Most times we've been taught to set up way open to it. You don't really need to anymore. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's fairly square.
I would say back to
slightly
the
open.
initial question, modernizing your short game. And,
Yeah.
and feel free to disagree with this, but it sure feels like best players, best short games I watch, it is much more square than open
Yes, correct.
than it was 20, 25 years ago.
Yep. On the extreme shots, you'll see guys get way open out of the bunker, and just to really cut the legs out from underneath it, guys will get way open. But stock shots, anything in that sort of family, you'll see them much more square. Even in the bunker.
Slightly open, maybe, touch.
Yeah, even in the
Not
bunker,
much.
you'll see them way more square now.
Yeah. I've got some good, we're going to show you a video of a bunker shot here.
Yeah.
Got some bunker technique that, these guys are dead square in a
Yeah.
bunker. And I remember when I first saw it, I texted you, I was like, what am I watching? It was Keith Mitchell.
Yeah.
Like, he's closed. His
Yeah.
feet were closed, and he's hitting these beautiful high spinners out of the bunker.
Yep.
Just kind of like he was talking about there.
Yeah, it gives you the brakes right here to allow this thing to allow that club head to pass. And so now you're providing tons and tons of loft on the way through.
Terry, you had a question?
Yeah, real simple for me. Tight lie
Yep.
equals pitch shot.
Uh,
I know there's exceptions way out there, but in general, tight lie is pitch shot.
I would say the pitch shot would equal carrying the ball 50% or more to the hole.
Okay.
That would be how I would define a pitch shot. A bump and run would be carrying it less than 50% and letting it run, like let's just say carrying it a third and letting it run 2/3.
It's in that family of shots. We're not doing anything
Correct.
risk or anything.
Correct. Yeah, and I would say,
That family of shots.
right, and that would be the stock, right? That's your baseline. And then from there, once you have that down, then it's like, okay, well now I can open the face, and now I can add a little bit of wrist. Now I can add a little bit of throw to my pitch shot without it being a flop shot. So it's get the baseline down first, and then you can get creative off of that baseline. And you can do the opposite too. You can go, okay, I've got my baseline here. Now I'm going to go here, and I really want to drive this thing down and into something, right? And so it's like that's the opposite, where now you're hitting it really low. Maybe bouncing it into a hill up onto a green. That would be sort of probably more of a bump and run.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think this kind of is good. The question was, the pitch shot off a tight lie, and then just for our audience, for the podcast, and the other question was, more square stance, right? We've been talking about. And so putting a button on this, 25 years ago, we talked about this on the phone. I remember like growing up in the Pacific Northwest, bent, everything was bent and wet, just, and like you're taught with open, ball back, shaft forward, right? And there's a time for this shot, but this was the stock shot where it's like, you kind of, okay, open up your stance, play the ball back with a shaft forward. And then it was like, so then you had to, that shaft lane's coming in pretty excessive. And so you can imagine when you're a little bit off, what happens?
dig.
In the Pacific Northwest, when you hit behind it, it's like,
It's bad news. Yeah.
and the divot's there and the ball's there.
And you're just
you're
not,
like-
you're not allowing the bounce to help you at all.
You know, and you're like, oh my goodness, right? And so then, you know, but then you time it up and it's pretty good, right? And so you can kind of do it, but then and then you always kind of fear that 1 out of 20 that leading edge gets caught. And say it's coming, it's coming.
Yeah.
And so what do you do? What do you do to when then
You put it more
right?
back
Then
in.
you start,
Oh, yeah.
you know, then you start trying to manufacture to not do that, right? And so off the stock shot, I think with that ball back, weight, excessive leading edge on the ground, look, that's a good shot. You got to have that, and we're going to get to that. I don't think it was the best for a stock shot for the amateur player. So now you fast forward to what we just talked about.
Yes.
Ball in the middle, shaft slightly forward. Okay, now I've got
width.
this structure. I've really created an environment, and here's where how I kind of sum it up, where I can hit down. The club head's going to hit the ground, but it's not going to dig. The probability of the leading edge getting caught is minimal. And so mentally, that helps me feel like I can go with it, and I don't fear that, right? So I can build a stock shot where I can create an environment where I can, yes, hit the ground, but it doesn't dig.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
yeah,
where
that-
I would put the
Yeah,
stock.
I would say the two biggest misses are a chunk and a blade, right? I mean, we've all kind of felt those, the chunk and the blade. Now, the chunk is where it starts. The blade is a reaction to the chunk, just
Right.
like how you demonstrated,
I
right?
mean,
the blade's the reaction.
I had that down. 17, 18. I mean, it was like 4. I mean, it's coming over the green. Like we've
that's
all
because
all
you-
been there, right?
that's because you
we've
didn't
all been
wanna
there.
chunk
Yeah,
it.
right. That's right.
Right? So, like how you were saying, if you can build some width, right, then all of a sudden you've got this shallower arc into the golf ball. You can hit half an inch behind the golf ball. The bounce engages, and it's like, well, I'm not afraid of that thing digging in behind it and laying the sod over it. You can still hit a very functional shot from half an inch to an inch behind it. Obviously, we're trying to hit ball first, but we're all human and we're going to mishit it. Yeah.
So you don't have to go to the Pacific Northwest. You got those conditions.
I can teach you that right here in Ponte Vedra, right off this.
Yeah.
So you would set up more like a stock shot. We have very damp soil around the green. Would we use more bounce for a?
I would go down. I would go down in loft and up in bounce. So, 56 degree or 52 degree.
The 8 or a 10 or the 10, 12?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And then we're not hitting down as much as we're doing the stock shot technique.
Correct. And then, and if you really want to catch ball first, just go slightly more back in the stance and just make sure that your levels are good, that you're not leaning too far back, and then you're just trying to rotate and shift that pressure forward in transition so that you feel like it's, man, I'm really moving that way. The more that you can move that way, the more this guy straightens, the taller you'll be, and the better your contact will be throughout. Because as your pressure goes this way, your low point goes that way as well, right? So again, to negate the fat shot,
Yeah.
shift your pressure forward in the through swing.
Yeah.
Low point moves more forward. You don't hit it as fat as often.
Huh? Yeah.
It's just hard. It's hard because
We'll
you got to
cover-
put
we'll
all
get
the
to that
puzzle
shot. We'll
pieces
cover that
together.
shot. Yeah, we'll get to
you
that,
got to put
yeah.
all the puzzle pieces together,
David,
right?
you
So
have
that
one
you
question, right?
are encouraged to move through. Yeah,
One quick one, Matt. So you're just off the edge of the green.
yeah.
You're into the grain. I always seem 5 out of 10. I chunk it or I go behind the ball and dig the club in.
Do you need height or can you hit it low?
I can go low, but I just can't cut it. You know, is it an uncuttable thing?
I would go. I mean, in all honesty, I would go like a 9-iron or a gap wedge, and I would literally make a putting stroke, right? So I would, if you've got that type of lie, I would go. The more that you can go handle up this way, the better it is for into the grain shots.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Because it's just you're only interacting with this toe right here. So there's less that you're going to be interacting with as far as the leading edge and the face and all that stuff, right? So the more that I can go this way, this just has a nice little way of getting underneath that golf ball. So I would get closer to it with like a 9-iron and feel like you're just going ball slightly back in your stance and just making a putting stroke. And the shorter the motion you can make, the better. The second you throw that 56 or 60 degree in your hand from 2, 3, 4 yards off the green, unless you practice 9 hours a day, I would say don't do it. Stay with the lower loft. It's just going to be, putting it's fine. Hybrid's fine. Use a 7-wood, a 5-wood. Start there using a putting type of a motion, and then work into like a 7-iron, a 9-iron, a gap wedge. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I know how to hit this shot. And then you give yourself a little bit more loft, the more comfortable you get with it.
Hey, Jeff?
You had mentioned about maybe taking a hybrid when you're on.
Yeah.
Still doing the same.
Yeah, you would still get close to it. I just bailed on my hybrid. I went to a 7-wood, which I highly recommend.
Wow. 7-woods are
7-wood
back.
coming back in style. So yeah, 7-wood. I would not set up to it this way. So I would get here, and I would grip down onto the graphite. Right, I would be down here making a putting stroke motion with a 7. But you can see how close I am, right? So you might stand up a little bit taller, not as much of this, not as much of this. Stand up a little bit taller, and just feel like, okay, I can be tall and make a putting stroke. You can see how quiet my lower body is. But that would be, I'm all about making golf simple.
Yeah.
It's all about simplifying. It's all about getting it close to, what's going to give you the best odds to get the ball close to the hole. That's what it's about.
So the putting them, because I want to move on to
Yeah.
I want to move on to getting it where we do have to steepen it a little bit, right? There are times where we want to get the leading edge maybe a little more exposed. Balls in the rough. We got to get down in there a little bit more. But everybody here, I would challenge you, if we haven't worked on it with you already, to have that stock shot that is maybe slightly towards the wider and shallower side. You can hit the ground. It's not going to dig. You can go with it, control the ball speed. Those are the things that really, I think we can kind of build off of that. And it's funny, that shot alone, you could probably hit 50% of the time, if not more, around the green when you miss a green.
Yeah, so our buddy Keith Mitchell, right? When we started, this is a great story. When we started together a handful of years ago, he's one of the top 10 drivers of the golf ball on the planet, right? You've played golf with him, insane. So
Here's Keith right here.
I asked Keith. I said, what do you do with your driver? He says, I hit a 2-yard fade. I said, okay, well, what do you do if it's like dogleg right to left and there's wind off the right? And he said, I hit a 2-yard fade. I said, okay, but what if it's like dead into the wind and then you've got this water left or whatever? He said, I hit a 2-yard fade. I said, okay, well, show me your short game because your stats are garbage. What are you doing with your short game? And so, and I say that jokingly, right?
Yeah.
But his stats were, he's like 210th or something when we first started. And he said, well, on this one, I'm going to hit like a little cutty, high kind of one that's going to kind of spin right. And then on the next one, it's going to be, I'm going to hit a draw kind of a, and I said, but you don't do that with your driver and you're unbelievable with that club. I said, what if we found a shot, like a stock shot, like your 2-yard cut? What if we found that for around the greens? And that's when he really started to dive into really finding his stock shot. Yeah. And I gave him kind of the blueprint of it, but he did the work to really find that stock shot for him. And to know, like, he was 2 yards off the green at Riviera on the 11th hole. Pin was in the back, nothing in front of him, except maybe a little bit of a mound. But he was there in 2, and he's got this 35-yard pitch shot. Grabs his highest lofted wedge because he's practiced so much with it. Takes it out, and the announcers are like, oh, I can't believe he's grabbing a high lofted wedge. And it's like, we've done the work. He's done the work, especially to know that what 30 yards in the air feels like. He gets up there, makes his 30-yard motion, lands at 30 yards, stops like this, because he knows it's going to land at 30 and stop at 35. And so, but that's his stock shot. It wasn't like he was trying to hit a cutty spinner or like a low little draw in there. And those are fun to practice, and they're good to have. But the long story that I'm going to end with is 85% of his shots from the fairway lie, he calls that he hits his vanilla pitch shot.
Yeah, vanilla.
Vanilla.
That's what he says?
Yeah, he calls it a vanilla pitch shot. He coined that term.
It's like name association. When you have it in your brain, it's like, kept vanilla shot. Here's A, B, C, D, E, F. You just go to it, right? And so like you have to identify, and these guys all have a stock shot.
Yeah.
I mean, they can hit a variety of shots. Don't get me wrong. And you have, and we're gonna talk about another shot here in a minute. But stock's got to mean something.
Yeah.
To your brain, you have to be like, here's exactly what I do. Boom,
So,
boom, boom,
yeah,
boom.
so you can run through this one.
Yeah, yeah.
This is face on, like,
Okay.
hit it, you know, you can see ball positions, like, kind of off his left heel here. Shaft just barely forward, but you can watch see how much pressure he shifts into this front foot here on the way through. It's not on the way back, right? Like, you can see pressure goes a little bit this way on the way back, right? And then he starts really working through it. Shaft comes back nearly almost to neutral, right? Like slight shaft lean
Slightly,
forward.
yep.
But
How far would you say he's hitting that shot?
that one's about a 30, 35 yarder. That was about a 35 yarder. Yeah, he was ripping, maybe almost 40. Yeah, it's probably about 40 actually. So and you know, as you guys dive into it deeper, you can maybe stop at the top real quick, Travis. So what I want, like on those really awkward ones, 40, 35, 40, 50, whatever it might be, what I would want you to pay attention to is, where is this club, right? Where is that club? Not where is this lead arm, but where is this club? Because this lead arm could be right here, right? The shaft could be there, but then I could be like this. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden I've created a lot of ball speed right here. Now all of a sudden this looks like a 60-yard shot when I only want to hit it 40. So it's important to know, where is this shaft? Okay, that's my 40-yard swing. Okay, that's 30. Okay, this is 50. Whatever it might be for you, with whatever club you've got, 56, 52, 60, whatever it might be. It's important on those awkward yardages not to necessarily pay attention to the lead arm, but pay attention to where is the shaft at top of backswing.
Here's the other view for that distance. So you can kind of,
Travis, you've got your video series, and that's, would you equate this to the dead arm?
yeah. I kind of talk about a
like a
little
dead arm,
bit
dead
of like a
hand.
stiff arm. I call it the Tommy Fleetwood drill. He does it for ball striking.
Yeah, just
Where he just kind of woodens out his arms and he feels like everything just kind of turns with it. And not a lot of wrist hinge. I mean, it's in there a little bit, but it's pretty passive. You guys notice this with a lot of these techniques, the wrists, it's in there, and we're going to get to where we're going to get more of it. There's a time to ask for it, right? And there's a time to get narrower.
yes.
There's a time to get steeper. But in the world of stock, we're probably going to stay away from that a little bit. That slows the ball speed down, allows you to widen out the bottom, control the ball, or not have to be so precise.
Correct.
Get the leading edge off the ground a little bit. Then you can go with it and build confidence off that, and then and variability. But yeah, to answer your question, kind of a little bit of a stiff arm kind of feeling with the chest, and that's kind of what you're seeing here.
Yep. But if you focus on the chest, right, then the arms don't go away from it this
Yeah.
way, right? So if you focus on moving your chest, the arms just kind of are there supporting what the chest is doing, you know?
So-
you just don't want the arms to be the leaders.
Okay, now let's move into where we've missed the green, and that's tumbling down, and we're in some rough. You know, we're out at Sawgrass, the valley, and it's
Yeah.
like, where's my ball there? You know, it's like, oh my God, the ball's sitting down, and
Yep.
you know, now we got to get
Now you
a
gotta get
little
much-
steeper.
yes.
Okay, so let's move into some steepening aspects here.
Okay, so steepening aspects would be weight pressure forward, right? So setting up, looking more like this, where I'm the more pressure I put on this front foot, steeper my angle of attack is going to be. Okay, I'm going to also get narrower on this backswing. That's going to help me access a little bit more sort of steepness, but also not get all the big thick grass behind the golf ball. Do we have video of Spieth?
I got Spieth here,
Yeah.
who
So
who is like who is guys from Texas, Spieth, Scheffler, some others, hard pan, right? They were kind of taught to get a little steeper on it, and so you can see the wrist hinge definitely getting more pronounced, right?
Yep.
And this is another variability. We're kind of getting to steepening aspects out of the rough. So I don't have. Did you
rough.
send me one?
I don't know if I did.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's right. But get into that wrist hinge and kind of that pressure forward now.
So pressure's forward. I'm going to go this way, hinge it up this way, so that now, like I'm coming down pretty steep on this thing. So for me to make sure I don't make a big mistake, I have to make sure that my exit is good. And by exit, I mean, like I don't want it to go this way and then deep down and pulling this way. I want it to go here and then back up. That's my way of exiting the ground. exiting the turf. Like just, I want that steepness for this shot because again, we're imagining that there's a lot of grass around this ball. I got to go down and go get it. First thing I always do in the rough, you'll always see every tour player. First thing they do, they got the balls in the rough, grab their lob wedge, they set that club behind it, and they're trying to look. They're looking at two things. Number one, they're looking at how much grass is behind the golf ball, and they're looking at how much grass is underneath the golf ball. Those are the two things they're paying attention to. The amount of grass behind the golf ball is going to tell them how fast they need to hit this shot, how firm, how much speed they need for this shot. The amount of grass underneath it tells them, well, where does my sort of swing arc need to be, right? Does it need to be deeper, more like a V? Or does it need to be, if it's sitting up, does it need to be sort of shallower, but like a little bit higher? So you can achieve that a couple ways, right? You could put it more back in the stance, catch it earlier on the arc, right? Or you can just kind of grip down on it a little bit and bring that swing arc up and just feel like you're staying real tall so that this thing just stays higher, right? Your swing arc stays a little bit higher and you don't go right underneath the golf ball. But the one that's sitting way down at the bottom, that's the one where it's like, I need to go down and go get it, but I don't want to go down and like deep. I want to go down, and then that's sort of the follow through. It's very, very handsy. That's my way of exiting.
So we're not turning our sternum very much.
Correct. Yeah, it's a totally different shot now. This one's more, this one, the bunker shot, the flop shot are way more controlled with my wrists, my hands, my arms. Much less here.
You want to be looking ahead of the ball, right at the ball, behind the ball, on that, if it's kind of sitting down and you're worried about getting underneath, like kind of like through like you're talking about?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I'm still, I think always a good measurement is like, where is your sternum, right? So like if I'm going to hit a higher one, my sternum's going to be back here because I almost want to hit it on the upswing. If I want to hit a lower one, my sternum's going to be here. If I'm like in the rough and I'm like, well, I don't really want to make my mistake too far behind it, but I also don't want to make my mistake over here because I know that if I come in this way, this ball is going to come out fast because I'm making a huge swing. So I would say it's more right on it. Yeah, but that's a good question. But you can, as a simple rule of thumb, you can just kind of use your sternum to be like, do I want to go low? Do I want to go high? Do I want to hit a medium trajectory shot? Like that's just an easy way to kind of dictate your lofts. And that would be ball position as well, right? So it's like ball position back, sternum is going to be over here. Ball position middle, sternum's here. Ball position slightly forward, sternum's here.
So you can see Spieth, like he's, you know, naturally a little steeper. You can see his sternum. He's definitely leaning. You got more pressure left, a little more wrist hinge. Sternum's a little more out in front, right? And I think one of the more fascinating stories as of late in the last couple years because it's possibly, you can be too shallow, right? You know, you want to have that stock shallower shot, but then you want to be able to get a little steeper on it. But there are times where it's like, man, maybe I'm too shallow. I need to get a little steeper just in general, right? Yep. And like what he's talking about there and some of these variables are doing that. But that pressure left and that sternum left, I'll show you something here. And this is a pretty cool overlay. This is Victor Hovland. And which one do you think is steeper, the green or the blue? Huh?
Yeah, that's a tricky
Actually, it's not
question.
the same. Sorry, that's tricky. It's the length of the swing's a little bit different. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a trick question.
But but as far as the sternum, watch the difference in the green and the blue. What do you see there? Which way is the green? Green's leaning more left, right?
So and that's a way like TrackMan will measure that low point. It will measure that as steep. Yeah. Right. Whereas the blue one, right, he's sort of creating a bit of wrist hinge, which can sometimes create steepness as well. So he's taken some wrist hinge out, but he's offset it by going forward.
It's a slightly different shot too. It's tough to get the exact same shot, you know, of what he was hitting. But those are two different shots from like 3 different years, or a space of 3 years. And so Vic has definitely gotten a little steeper, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And which he probably needed to help his short game because he was maybe a little on the shallow side. But the point of this video is you can see the green kind of, you know, a little more pressure over here, right? And so I think that's kind of a cool little trick of the trade that I think helps so many, is that sternum and that pressure feeling a little more left as it's going back. And that really does help get that club head down in there more, especially out of the rough.
And when you look at just the head position in general,
Yeah.
right? Jason Day, if we did an overlay of Jason Day, his head does not move at all, right? It's just dead, and he's one of the best chippers I've ever seen. So the head movement is sort of idiosyncratic for a lot of players. Some players will move their head forward, but they're actually still, the pressure's still on the trail foot, slightly.
Still on the trail, oh, okay.
Still on the trail foot slightly. So obviously, my arms weigh something, the club weighs something. So to offset that, my head goes a little forward. The pressure's still here though, right?
Okay.
And so don't be fooled if you look at yourself in video and you say, oh, well, my head's going too far forward. It's like, don't worry too much about that. That's a little bit of an idiosyncratic move of, now Victor at the time was really trying to put pressure here, right? So that's a different thing.
So you get in that rough, right? You get in the rough, go ahead and lean that shaft a little more forward, base a little open, get over there a little bit more to the left, give it a little more wrist hinge, down in there.
Yes.
Right. That now you've made it a little more of that V shape, and a little less of the U. That make sense? Kind of in how that work would miss the green, similar shot, but man, that ball's sitting down more, right? Not so fluffy.
Yeah. So it would look more like this, up, down. That would be like my shot for the rough, right? So much different than my pitch shot, which looks more like a putting stroke. This looks nothing like a putting stroke, does it? Hands are way low. I'm squatting down, and I'm just using my arms and my wrists up, down that way. So it has no real relationship at all to my putting stroke.
Yeah.
Which is why bunkers and rough and like it's a really hard skill to master.
What's the benefit of the abbreviated follow-through on top of that?
Usually it's basically just the grass is going to grab it. And so I'm not necessarily trying to get all the way through. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm delivering all that speed and feeling like I'm done here, because I don't, it's going to grab onto the club head, especially, when you're playing really thick grass, it'll grab on. So I'm not focused on my follow through. I'm just trying to get as steep as I can up here, boom, and then just be done.
Would you intuitively know if you're dragging through grass way out there, you're going to come down with too much speed?
In the thick rough, I want speed, right? I want speed, but I also want that club face looking like this, right? Which is open so that I can swing fast, so I can get some softness. It's much easier to hit a 30 or 40 yard shot out of the rough. I can just be here, up, and then it just kind of comes out, tumbles. Much more difficult if I've only got a couple yards of green to work with. It's like, okay, now I got to open the face, but I got a really bad lie. So I got to go, more down I go to get it, faster this ball wants to come out. So I got to offset that by how much I release it, how much that club face is open. I'm trying to release it right underneath it. Hopefully it offsets the amount of speed and steepness I'm giving to the shot. That's it. Yeah, it's a good question.
The different grass here, with Bermuda in the summer where it sits down kind of like in a nest versus if you're in bed, where it sits down.
Yep. You would play that Bermuda shot usually with a slightly lower loft. I always think in Bermuda lower loft is better. So I usually love to chip and pitch with my 60. In Bermuda, I'm almost exclusively going with my 56. It just works better through the Bermuda grass. And I grew up in Hawaii, so it's just sort of like trial and error of like all the Bermuda grasses.
Marga Stubblefield.
Yeah. I know Marga, yeah.
Yeah, I used to work with her when I lived out there. I remember her saying, hit in the Bermuda, hit like in the nest, hit it like a bunker.
And you hit it like, that was going to be my next suggestion, was like, you really want to hit it like a bunker shot, because most of the time it comes out, kind of poofy. And you want to be able to play for the poof. So if you don't give it any speed, the ball is just going to go here. So you got to be able to give it speed and just be like, I got to trust it. I've read the lie. It's not clean, right? You're looking at the grass behind the golf ball, make sure that it's not going to be clean. Because if you make that same swing and it's clean, you're going to hit it 40 yards, right? We don't want to do that. So you got to read the lie first. That's the most important thing. Make sure that there's grass behind the ball, and then you're playing for that sort of poof shot, right? You're playing for that bunker shot.
How many kind of leave it down in there, that rough? That's a fun one. You know, like what he's talking about here with the setup and the hinge and pressure left, and then that thump down into it, and then leaving that club down in there, you know, kind of waist high.
But you guys can see, like, you know, it's not a super reliable shot off of a fairway lie.
Yeah, this isn't. Yeah, I mean,
Right? It's coming out all sorts of ways. So it's like, this is the shot out of the rough where it's like, I just need speed.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a fun one once you understand how to then exit this club this way, right? And again, it's the lead hand, just allowing it to play. Hinge up, release out. Don't move this here, that way. This is the essence of it. Leave this quiet. Whereas the other one, it's like, I want to leave the wrist quiet and I want to go this way. I think that's why golf's so gosh darn hard, right? It's like you can't just have the same swing for each. And it's like, you know, with full swing, it's like,
Yeah.
you're hitting down on an iron shot, but you're hitting up on a driver, right?
Hopefully. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the
Potentially.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, yeah. But that's what makes it so.
There's a
That's
few
what
in
makes,
here that haven't figured that out yet.
well, that's what makes it so difficult, right? It's just there's so many different skill sets to acquire.
If you're like most golfers, you blame yourself when you miss a short putt. So after you hold back the urge to throw your putter in the lake, don't do that. You try to fix your putting stroke. But how long does that last? 1 week, 1 round, 1 hole? There's a company called Lab Golf that doesn't think you should be blaming yourself. That's because all putters have this thing called torque, which means the putter face is trying to twist during the stroke, so you grip it like a snake. What Lab Golf did is they figured out how to make putters with no torque. They call it lie angle balance. And you have to feel it to believe it. I did. The Lab Golf putter, you don't have to use a funny putting grip to try to keep the face square. You can putt it any way you want because Lab Golf putter stays perfectly square by itself. It's effortless. To see how much easier putting can be, head over to labgolf.com.
Women's wedges.
Okay.
In a standard woman's set, is there any particular bounce? Would they benefit from getting real wedges with appropriate shafts?
That's a good question on the real wedges to the stock, to the
A stock,
pitching wedge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I would say that, I would say some of my best clients have been women that they really understand, like, how to move the body. And I remember doing a couple of clinics at LA Country Club a couple of years ago, and I had these 2 women that I was like, it's basically a putting stroke, but you can go as fast as you, and these women are flighting it down, they're spinning it from 20, 30 yards, and I'm like, y'all are putting the men to shame. But they had, real wedges, not the stock wedges that come, that just say, like he's got a G on here. If he had an S and then a L on a stock standard thing, the grooves are different, I think.
Yeah, they're just
they're
totally
not
different.
made the same. So you do want,
Yeah.
I would get a good
yes.
wedge with a
Yeah.
ladies, the proper
Absolutely.
shaft. And shaft wise, we're usually slightly softer, slightly lighter in our wedges than in our irons. So like in my irons, I'm at it would basically be like an X100, and this is an S400. So it's slightly softer.
Yeah, the wedges are yours are
Yes,
slightly
softer.
How about weight?
The wedges are usually like pretty heavy. Like it's got a lot of.
Shaft weight.
Well, I think that this S400 is slightly lighter, but I don't actually know. It might be the same.
So as we're aging, we're going into later shafts.
Yeah, go lighter shafts. I'm made,
Stay
yeah.
a little heavier in the wedge.
Well, the wedges in general are going to be heavier
Yeah.
than like your driver is, right?
just the head.
Just the head is so
Yeah,
much
head's gonna be
heavier. Even though they're shorter, they're going to be heavier.
More weight of the shaft, like a 120-gram shaft versus a 100 shaft.
I would, whatever you've got on your irons, I would go slightly less stiff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like one notch down. And
For
if
your
you did
wedges,
want to
yep.
go slightly lighter, like 10 grams lighter, you could do that too.
I'll just plug these guys real quick on that note. True Spec. Some of you have been fitted in here with Clay, who's just fantastic. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have Clay in here with True Spec. He's one of the best fitters I've ever seen. And we just got all the 2025 stuff in, so it's been kind of fun. We just unwrapped every manufacturer and been hitting it, so it's been really fun. But what's fun with that, to your point, is when they fit, they build every club individually themselves. And so oftentimes they will take the wedges different. And so like your irons will be this and your wedges will be this. And because they're building them individually and he can take it to that detail. So it is fascinating that the wedges should be a little softer, a little lighter in flex, but probably touch heavier.
They're going to be a touch heavier, which
Touch
means
heavier,
maybe
yeah.
you could go a little lighter in the shaft, but
Yeah.
it just really depends on what you like.
So it's amazing the science of fitting now, and just, a lot of it. I mean, the market for shafts it's insane, really.
Yeah.
Like what these shafts do, and to be able to mix and match with different heads and manufacturers, and be able to
Yeah, I just
put
got
that in someone's hand and say, hey, this is probably like, oh wow, I mean, that feels like
Yeah.
totally different than that one, and feels a lot better. It's pretty amazing. And
Yeah, I
wedges
just-
too. I mean, he does it with the wedges. It's
I
incredible.
just got properly fit at Titleist like a couple months ago, and I hadn't done it in
Yeah.
15 years probably, and I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is crazy. And the numbers that they're looking for you to hit as far as like your apex, I would say the biggest takeaway that I had was that the apex was going to be the exact same for every club in my bag. So, which means you're going to hit your short irons low, and you're going to hit your long irons high. And the apex is going to be about, they said, between 90 and 110 feet. And I was like, wow, I don't know if I've ever heard that before, but it was pretty interesting. So he had to do special things to my 4-iron to get it to go up that high.
Yeah.
I just had a fitting with Clay, and I went from a 90 or 95 gram iron shaft to an 80 gram. And then we looked at the wedges, and so 80 gram to 125 gram. And so the numbers and everything were not good. So he put me in a 105 gram wedge shaft, and it came out perfect. So
That's cool.
and
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you exactly what the
It's a science, man. It's amazing. I can't do what he does.
Yeah, it's neat.
Like, it's so deep now.
Yeah.
It's so beyond. Back in the Cracker Jack days, when I started teaching, was in Scottsdale, just not far from where he's at, and the place was called Cracker Jacks.
Yeah, it was.
You know what it is?
No.
You know,
It's since closed.
Like it's 99 cents or 99 cents, $99. This was 1999. $99 Saturday Super Clinic, free hot dog, and bring your family, and they get a free ride on bumper cars. That's one of those places. That's where it all started. And they just tore it down, which is an absolute bummer.
Travesty.
I mean, in the prime spot of North Scottsdale. I mean, the best real estate you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Here's this amusement park with this terrible driving range.
Terrible.
Terrible. They didn't belong there, and they just tore it down.
You want to talk a little bunker?
Yeah, let's talk. Yeah, I want to finish with like a stock greenside bunker play.
Yes.
And if we could, let me just put this video up here real quick. If we could, I'd love for you to talk about the setup and the open versus square. This is Scotty McCarron on
Yeah.
the Champions Tour.
So you see pretty square. Pretty square.
This is what you're seeing now on
he-
a lot of this.
What he does with the club face, I don't recommend. This is unbelievable, like idiosyncratic. Watch what he does. See if you can stop it maybe at the top.
Okay.
Trav.
Yeah, hold on one sec.
Yeah, see if we can go.
I'll take it up to the top.
Yeah, just go maybe halfway back. Go halfway back over here. Watch see how open that club face is?
Wow.
Like that is wildly open. So Scott sets up pretty square, but then he does what he calls the swirl. So he tries to swirl this club face this way on the way back, which is nuts. It's crazy, incredible to do. But it allows him more loft at top of swing so that he can then hit a high and soft one. But it's a really tough skill to get. But let's just go through regular bunker
Yep,
setup. So, modern regular bunker setup. Feet are much more square. Is it one of those dowels?
Hold on. TGL's got nothing on us.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Boom.
TGL's got nothing on this.
Boom.
There you go. There's a crane dropping in the.
All right, so old school bunker play, right? You can see that dowel is basically on there showing middle of the face where this club face is pointed. So if I twist it to the right, it's pointed out to the right, okay? Twist it to the left, point it to the left. Okay, so this is dead square. So if I open the face like how we were taught in the olden days, just open the face and then offset it with your stance, right? Now you just swing along your feet line and hopefully you'll deflect it towards the target. That was the old way of doing things, okay? So new school way, modernized way of doing it. Okay, so we're still gonna twist that face open. You can see it's pointed out to the right, yes? Now watch as I get further away from the golf ball. Watch what I do with my hands. Where's that face now pointed? It's now pointed almost left of my target, isn't it? So this is the reason why I don't have to swing so far out to in anymore. We've figured out you can lower your hands. And the second you lower your hands, now all of a sudden that club face is pointed much more straight. Does that make sense to everyone? The higher I raise my hands, the more it points out to the right. Lower I get my hands, the more it points to the left. Haven't done anything with the club face. The club face has stayed the same exact place, right? All I've done is raise my hands and lower my hands. Okay? So as we get further away from the golf ball, I can lower my hands, I have space, and now this is pointed at my target. That club face is pointed at my target, even though the grooves are pointed way over there to that red thing, right? Grooves are pointed over there, but the actual club face is pointed at the target. So from there, again, we're in a much more sitting down position. Legs are bent, you know, really just engaging these muscles, and really trying to sit down to give myself some space, get a little further away from it. And shaft's going to be fairly neutral, so from face on, it looks like this. That's not good, obviously, right? We don't want to be there. Once in a while, I'll get there for a really, really tough shot, really difficult. Need to go super soft with it. I may get there, but for the most part, it's just kind of right in here. Okay. Obviously, if we go this way, I'm not showing a lot of club face to the golf ball. So for a lot of people that struggle with hosling or blading it, you're not showing a lot of club face to the golf ball. So there's hands are too far forward, or you're dragging them through impact. Okay. So handle down, and from here, again, I'm trying to stay as quiet as I can with my legs. So it's really feeling like arms and hands are doing the work. Again, if I was just going to hit this thing with left hand only, it would be up, down that way. Does that make sense? So put the right hand on, add a little bit of speed. These are going to stay as quiet as I can. The last one, my lower body didn't move at all. And I'll do the same thing with both hands on there. I'll do like a little drill where I'll kick these guys out, and I'll just go up, down that way. So I can still hit a functional shot that way. I would never play that on the golf course. But if I feel like, and most people who are playing a lot of golf will get into the habit of driving that lower body, which then drags the hands, which is never a good pattern. So a drill I will do is to stay there and just feel this. Now, my regular motion would look more like that. So I've moved, but in essence, I'm only moving just to make it look nice. I don't really ever think that I'm hitting this shot with my chest. I think I'm hitting this shot with my wrist hinge that way. I can hit much better shots that way than I can if I was thinking about hitting the shot with my chest. It's a lot of risks, and that's why this shot is so difficult. That's why I think amateurs struggle with it so much. So we don't have to swing so far out to in, right? You can kind of see I'm sort of on plane here, coming up, coming down. And then, you know, like Colin Morikawa, he started dropping this right foot back, and he starts to now hit this shot this way. So it actually gives him that break right at the end there. So as he has that break, this club head can pass his hands. That's what allows him to hit those high, soft ones, swing as hard as he wants to at it, right? So if you have drag in here, you're going to be in the sand for a really, really long time. We don't want to be in the sand for a long time. We all know how that feels.
You still like 2 inches behind the ball, or?
2 inches behind the ball. Yep, I'll get in there. That's one of my, I would say, if we had actual sand, that's the first drill I would do. I would draw a line like this. I would get in there, and I'd make 10 swings with no golf ball and see where my entry point into the sand is. Probably the biggest indicator of if you're going to hit a good shot or not. So that would be number one. And if I was way off, let's just say I was here. If I was way off and I was too far back, then forward, then too far back, I can change that a couple of ways, 3 ways. I can change it just simply through ball position. Most people go, so if this is my entry point, golf ball will be right here. Does that make sense? 2 inches. So I think Fleetwood, you know, I've always said 2 inches, but Fleetwood said like basically 1 golf ball, which is 1.68 inches. So 1 golf ball, and then you draw a line. So basically 2 inches, okay? So that's my entry point. This is my golf ball. So a lot of people, golf ball's too far forward. Entry point then becomes too far back. You're never going to hit a good shot entering 6 inches behind the golf ball. It's got to be that 2, 3, maybe 4, but really in that 2 or 3 inch range. So ball position is much more middle than what is normally thought of in the bunker. Now you will see tour players who will get into the bunker and they'll put that ball position way forward. Now here's the key with that. Like a Brooks Koepka, Luke Donald, they will get in there, ball position way forward, right? But now think about your entry point's going to, again, we're talking about the sternum again. That entry point's going to be here. So where's my sternum? It's back in this area. So what do I need to do? I need to shift this sternum way over here. So now I can almost pick up my back foot. I've got so much pressure over here because I've got this sternum way on top of it. So if you're going to go ball position way forward, shift that sternum to match up to it. I would say if you're just going to start stock standard, hey, I just want to hit some good bunker shots, go 50-50, maybe 55% on your front foot. Ball position slightly forward to center. Entry point basically right in the middle of my stance. And then just start seeing if you can just quiet legs, hinge up, release it out. Right? So we want steepness in the bunker, but I want an exit strategy as well. Right? So that's why we're up here, release, and we're exiting this way. So we want that thing to come in steep, and then we want that exit. Yes?
Yeah, what about the difference between like a hard packed sand,
Great.
versus fluffy
Yeah.
sand?
So just like in the rough, number one thing to do is read the lie. Okay? So if you're reading the lie and you've got yourself firm, hard packed sand, or even, if we're just looking at 2 balls and one's, just sitting up on a tee, amazing. The other one's sitting down and you can feel like it's much more on that hard, firm. So this one I would just play my normal one. It's got a great lie. I can go right underneath it, boom, no problem. This one, I would actually get much closer to it to even build more of a vertical plane right here. Because if this thing is sitting all the way at the bottom, right, like there's no sand underneath it, it's firm, hard pan sand, my only job is to get access to that sand that's underneath it. And it's going to be really difficult to do. So I got to really go down and go get this thing. So I get closer to the ball, really, really early vertical hinge this way. And then I just come straight down on it, up, and I'm almost no follow through, right? Because firm, hard packed sand, ball's coming out fast. Soft, fluffy sand, ball's coming out slow. You got to play for that as well. But in that firm hard pack sand, it's straight up, straight down, and you're almost coming so much straight down that you have no room for a follow through, right? You're just your only emphasis is going to be on getting access to the sand underneath the ball. Because wherever you are, even if you're in I play a lot of golf in the desert. I'm in the desert a handful of times, and it's firm, hard pan, like it hasn't gotten rain in 6-8 months. So if I can't catch it clean and and I'm trying to hit a high, soft bunker shot type, there's always soil underneath there, no matter how firm it feels. It's just my job to get access to it. So the one way I can do it is just straight vertical. Other way I could do it is engage this heel. Heel's going to usually want to dig more. Toe's going to want to glide more. I learned that from Paul Azier. He was a wizard with it. But so you'd want to engage that heel on the way through. That'll help you dig a little bit more. But there's always, no matter how firm it is, there's always going to be some type of sand under there. It's your job to get access to that sand.
I want to follow up on that because it feels like to me that when I hit behind the ball and it's hard, that club bounces off of there and blades that ball.
Correct.
And so,
That's the big miss.
yeah,
Correct.
now I'm in there for half the day.
Yes. So you got to build a steeper angle into that golf ball.
I go get my gap ledge, and I just dig that front end right straight down.
That's another way to do it, but that's going to make the ball come out a little faster.
If it's out, I'm happy.
Out is great. Out is great. Yeah. So leading edge will dig a little bit more, but the more that you get that leading edge in there, the ball is going to want to come out this way. So if you have to go up, out of a lip that's a little higher or to a pin that's a little bit closer, you can go slight open face and then just go really vertical, really down into it. Yeah, that's more for the softer one. But yeah, if you've got a longer bunker shot, square up the face and that's fine too. Engage that leading edge a little more.
And the opposite with softer sand?
Yeah, softer sand, lower loft. So go down to a 56 or a 52. That's like number one. And then, everything that we just did on the previous, we're going to kind of almost do the opposite. But I would say, like, as we get into the previous one, it's here, we're straight up and down, right? This way. Now I'm going to feel a little bit less. So I'm going to feel like, rather than my weight being so far forward and creating this super steep angle, I'm going to feel a lot more neutral, maybe a little bit more on my trail foot just to kind of shallow it out because I don't want this club to like really dig and dive into the sand, right? I want to keep it on top. So, another good thing to do is on that thicker sand is just grip down just a little bit. So you just don't dig quite as much, right?
And bounce, similar philosophy, the harder stuff, less bounce?
Correct.
Just more bounce?
Correct. One of the interesting things that, I watch some European players and they're in that really thick, heavy sand in Scotland all the time, right? And one of the things that they do is they really push this way on the way through for that really thick sand. I've tried it a bit. It's a bit tricky to do. It's a bit tricky to sort of time out. But that's another way of sort of helping you like really stay on top of like not allowing that club to get too deep into the sand. It'll just kind of help you stay a little shallower with your arc on the way through.
That's more ball speed when they do that.
Yeah, but you gotta think that the thicker the sand, the heavier the sand, the more it's gonna resist and slow your club down. Probably the more speed you need. And I would say the big miss. So like the big miss that we were talking about a minute ago, the big miss out of the bunker is bounce and blade over the green, right? The big miss for a thicker sand, right underneath it, you got to hit it again. So we're trying to play the opposites, right? So what can I do to, if this ball in the thick sand only wants to go a foot and I make a good swing at it, what can I do? Well, I got to go down and loft, that'll help. Maybe not open the face up quite as much. And then try to swing a little bit shallower so that it's not quite as, I'm not going to go right underneath it, Yeah, those are good, really good questions.
They're really good. Steeper.
Optimal live. Fried egg and or
Fri-
buried.
Fried egg and bad lie are going to be, they're going to be very similar to each other, right? So when the ball is sitting down here, I'm still up here, right? So I'm still up, and it's just very much that way. So I'm just trying to get, again, if that ball's sitting with a bunch of sand around it, my only job is to get access to this sand that's underneath here. That's the only thing I'm trying to think about.
Old school would be for a buried lie, close it down, hit it as hard as you can.
And you can do that if the pin's far away, no problem. But if the pin's close, you can, I've played millions of shots where I've opened the face up and gone just straight up, straight down, and this thing just has some softness to it. So you can play them both ways. Just depends on where the pin is. I think that's the fun thing about short game is there's so many ways to do it. All depends on your lie, and all depends on what's in front of you, between you and the hole. I mean, you could hit a 9-iron, gap wedge, whatever it is, to get it close to the hole. Hybrid, 7-wood, doesn't matter. Putter, as long as you're trying to get it somewhere in that area, right? I just hope to give you guys a variety more tools to be able to help you get it close to the hole, some options, and then in those options, hey, here's the proper technique for those variety of options. Yeah. Those are good. Those are good.
Yeah. They are.
And Tiger talks about in the bunker. He talks about hitting draws, right? So he'll talk about really dropping this back and hitting draws.
Yeah.
And that really engages the hands, right? Because if I'm starting with this club face like this, I've got to really let these hands go to try to hit a draw.
How many of you hit it with it? How many bunker
slightly
technique do you hit it square, or are you open? Are a lot of you open right now, or are you pretty square? Pretty open, yeah. Be interesting, right? To go hit some of your opens, go back, hit some squares, work the wrists like he's talking about here. I really do feel like it's a big staple of the modern game.
Yeah.
What we're watching has squared up considerably.
Yeah.
I would say through the short game.
Through the short game,
But particularly in the bunker.
Absolutely, but I think this is probably the best visual, right?
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Just to
Phenomenal,
understand like where it's pointed, and then as I drop my hands down, right? It's like, okay, well if that's pointed over there, and then I just drop my hands, now it's pointed more square.
Yeah, those lower hands tend to help in the bunker. I see a lot. It's hard to teach bunkers in here, but when we do, we're up here. You gotta get down in there. That wrist angle down in there.
I know it's not short game, but when you're in a fairway bunker, you like to choke down on the club. So you're trying to. I obviously got to catch it perfectly clean.
For like a 9-iron, 8-iron, 7-iron?
Full swing, yeah.
I'm a terrible fairway bunker player. I'm not the one to ask.
I think in general, yes. Yeah.
I would say, that's more of a that's more of a you question.
I would say, yeah.
I'm still trying to find the secret sauce in the fairway bunkers. But I would say, I would say you can play shots up to like probably a 7-iron, opening the face, hitting 2 inches behind it. I was at Pebble Beach about a week and a half ago. I'll post it at some point, but I hit a shot from the left greenside bunker 60 yards away from the hole with a 9-iron, hitting 2 inches behind it.
Wow.
Flew the thing about 55, 60 yards and lands on the green, and you got a chance, right? And I didn't have to hit a sand wedge perfectly clean. I was able to chunk basically a 9-iron. So play around with some of that stuff because, these guys on tour are using less loft than you think out of the bunker. I caddied for a buddy of mine, Ricky Barnes, at the Sony Open in Hawaii a handful of years ago, and we were in a variety of bunkers, greenside bunkers, and I would always reach for his 59 degree and hand it to him. And he's like, no, this one's a 55. I was like, oh, okay. Get to the next bunker on the next hole. Here's your 59. No, give me the 51.
What?
And his vision in his head was, I just want to land this a yard onto the green, and I'm going to let it run like a putt.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow,
that's
like
crazy.
that's how he saw it. There's so many different ways of playing it, right? You don't always have to be like, I got to clip this thing perfect and like land it next to the hole and spin it. You take more risk doing that.
Yeah.
The way that he's doing it is like, he's just like, no, I'm going to just chunk it, get it out onto the green and let it run like a putt. and he's one of the best bunker players I've ever seen. There's a lot of ways to do it, and they're not, you know, like Ricky Fowler tells me that he uses a 52 degree out of a greenside bunker probably like once every other day.
Wow, 52?
52.
Greenside? Wow.
Greenside bunker once every other day. So
Interesting.
these guys are using less loft than you think. It's not always their highest lofted wedge out of the bunker. So don't be afraid to practice with your 56, your 52, your 48, your 43. Practice with different lofts out of the bunker.
Old school setup, 56 degree. You hit a good bunker shot, comes out of the bunker very nicely, but tends to have a lot of
Spin to the right.
Moves a little right and doesn't run out
Yeah.
toward the hole. With this new technique, would that tend to land and roll?
Not necessarily. This one's meant to probably like roll a little straighter. Like, so the spin axis is probably a little bit more level. It won't be quite as tilted to the right and spinning to the right, but you'll still get a lot of spin here unless you sort of change how far behind you hit it and your follow through. So like if I was just going to make like a higher spinning shot, it would be more of that follow through that is sort of our standard follow through this way. It's going to be more, that's going to be more my spinny one. If I was not going to spin it and I was going to kind of chunk and run it, I would probably get just a fraction closer to it, and I would feel a lot more length on my follow through and hit maybe a half inch further behind it. So it would feel more that way than that way. And I would hit slightly more behind it, and it would kind of come out tumbly a little bit more.
Everyone see that, how he changed that?
Yeah, from face on, it's this would be the narrow, spinnier, higher, and then this would be a little bit lower, and I would aim to hit an inch more behind the ball to let it run out.
Yeah, that's good stuff there. The two different types of finishes.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many combinations, right? It's like
We've only got 2.5 more hours.
It
So
takes
hang in there. We're almost.
It takes a lifetime to learn.
Coffee. We just started the pot of coffee. So as a recap here, before we have a few questions, we think about, and I'll send the link to this video for everybody, and Parker can talk about his videos, but the stock shot, right? We go back to you got your stock. Then we can go a little steeper, if we need to, and kind of in the rough and leave it down in there. And then we can go kind of the stock or the greenside bunker square and what he was doing there. And so those are three really, I think, cool shots to kind of understand and practice.
And even you guys just sitting right there and looking, you can see how different my setup is for bunker versus a pitch shot.
Yeah.
Drastically different, right? Just drastically different.
It's a different family.
It's a different family, exactly right.
right.
It's the Montagues and the Capulets. They do not agree with each other. So if I, it's like, if I see someone that I'm playing with set up in a fairway looking like this, I'm like, well, they're probably going to hit a flop shot. And if they're not going to hit a flop shot, then they've got to do a lot of things to then not hit this thing straight up in the air. So it's like, I always say, with short game, it's like, you got to really own that setup. And if I take a snapshot of you at setup, it's going to tell me a story.
Yeah.
And that story is, okay, looks like he's going to hit a pitch shot. Okay, looks like he's going to hit a bump and run. Okay, looks like he's going to hit a flop shot or a bunker shot. Or a shot from the rough would be more like this. I would lean more this way because I really want to get down into that thick grass. So if I was taking a snapshot of you at address, would it tell the proper story? Or are you set up the same way to each shot? Because if you are, it might be why you're struggling.
Any other questions on that? We're going to hang around here for a little bit too afterwards so we can talk one-on-one. But if any other questions on the short game here, we got some time.
I got a question. You get a good junior company or a college player, they work with you for an hour or two. I'm not talking putting or bunker play, but just wedge play on the team. What are you telling them when they leave as far as how to structure the practice? Like, what are you telling them how to work on how to get better?
Yeah, I would say some of it's going to be block practice to ingrain the techniques. And then a lot of it is going to be sort of what I call sort of like tournament prep practice. So it's going to be rather than standing there in one spot and same, it's going to be like, okay, grab 3 balls, same target, I want to see 3 different heights, 3 different trajectories, and get them all within 5 feet. Okay, now I want you to start walking around with 2 balls, and you got to hit 2 different shots, and we're going to play 9 holes, and you're going to hit a high one and a low one, or a medium one and a low one, whatever it might be, and you got to then get creative and really start to be like, how am I going to get this inside of 4 feet? What club am I going to use? Where am I going to land it? Start to match up the techniques you've been working on with then like, okay, what's real life? Okay, this is going to land right there. What trajectory do I need? What spin do I need? How is it going to run out? Is it landing down grain? Is it into the wind? All that stuff factors in, and I like my students to talk it out. Okay, this lie feels like it's a little firm under there. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of loft, but then I know that it's firm, so I know it's going to probably come out a little faster. So then where do I need to land it? How much speed do I need to give in the swing? Talk all that stuff out, because that's the way it's going to start to like just become second nature. But you got to like verbalize it. So I would do block practice and then tournament prep practice. And then I'd like to do these awkward yardages. I like to do a ladder drill from 20 to 50 yards every 5 yards and put 3 balls at each and just go down the ladder, up the ladder, back down the ladder. And just kind of see, you know, what, see how you can score. And the goal is to land it like at 20. So the pin would be at 25. Okay, so you would land it at 20, and then you go to the next one. Try to land at 25 in the same spot. Hopefully you've got somebody up there that can chart how you're doing. But if you don't, you can kind of see if it's a couple yards short or a couple yards long. Or if you've got a launch monitor or whatever, you can just 20, 25, 30, 35, and you can kind of test it and see. But those would be the biggest things. I think that block practice is really good. Tournament prep practice is really good. And then just getting good at those awkward yardages from 20 to 70, 80 yards, or just, they're awkward and nobody practices them. Nobody knows exactly like, yeah, this is 30. Nobody knows that. Nobody practices that.
Yep. Anyone else? Yeah.
You're around the green, you're going to take a club other than a wedge, kind of like you showed me earlier with the 7-wood. Can you talk us through a thought process of when maybe I would do a 7-wood or a 7-iron or a 9-iron or something other than a wedge, what to be looking for to grab something different?
No, that's a great question. It starts with the lie, and I'm considering like how far down is it sitting? Is it into the grain? Is it wet? Is it firm? All that kind of stuff plays into it. And then I'm going with, okay, well, once I read that lie, then what's in front of me? Is the grass laying kind of with me? Is it laying into me? How much do I need to carry to get it on the green? I'd say American golf, for the most part, we're wanting to carry it onto the green with our short game shots. European golf, not as much, right? You can bump it in there and all this kind of stuff. But most American golf, you're trying to find some club that's going to carry it onto the green by maybe a yard. And then maybe run it out to the hole, or if you've got a great lie, you can put some spin on it. But those are the things that I would pay attention to. So if I've got then 4 yards, if the ball's sitting down and I've got 4 yards, be like, well, okay, maybe it depends on where the pin is. If it's another 20 or 30 feet, okay, well, I can maybe use a 9-iron, a gap wedge, make that putting stroke type motion. And depending on the lie, I may turn the club face in a little bit if I want it to run out and almost feel a little bit more draw path. Or I may open the club face up a little bit if I need a little bit more stopping power, just fractionally. And I may swing a little bit more out to in, just barely to match up to that. But if it's all clean in front, you're welcome to hit a hybrid, a 7-wood, a putter. If you've got carpet in front of you, grab the lower loft. It's going to be that old saying of like grabbing the putter versus the wedge. Your worst putt is going to be much better than your worst 60-degree chip for the most part, right? So the lower the loft, the better. Considering it's not, if it's dead into the grain, that you'd rather have like a 7-wood that kind of bounce, so it's not hugging into the grain. But if it's down grain, putter all day, right? But that's a great question.
Yeah.
It always starts with reading the lie. From fairway, rough, bunker, it always starts with reading the lie first. And then you say, okay, I've read this lie, I know what it's going to kind of do. Now what's in front of me? Can I play that shot? Do I have to go to like a super crazy shot because I've only got 3 yards of green to work with? Or it's straight downhill, straight downwind, straight down grain. Got to go with a crazy shot. So it just, it sort of like starts with the lie, and then it's like, okay, now I can look up and be like, what's in front of me? What am I trying to achieve here? And how much room do I have? You know, what is the green saying to me?
Along the same lines, you've got relatively good grass. You want to use a hybrid or a 7-wood. Is there, of the hybrids, less loft or more loft? Do you lean toward?
I mean, yeah, they're all going to be fairly similar, but I would say a little bit more loft if it's like into the grain or if it's a bad lie, a little bit more loft just to kind of get it bouncing. Yeah, on top of the grass.
Yeah.
Versus, the less loft is going to hit it more in and it's going to really kill it. I would say a little bit more loft would be better if it's into the grain or if it's got a poor lie. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell them about the, we'll finish with this, the videos. So shortgamechef.com.
I've got 300 plus videos on there that walk you step by step through pitch, bump and run, bunker, fried egg, cure the yips, all that stuff, putting. And then I've got these amazing interviews with like Rocco, Lee Trevino, Ben Crenshaw, Brad Faxon, Keith Mitchell that are all on there as well, that we talk their strategies as to how they, like how Brad Faxon putted, how Ben Crenshaw putted.
Yeah.
It's on there. It's like super interesting to watch and listen. I'll give you one quick story on Ben Crenshaw. We didn't really talk about putting, but I was able to kind of chat with Ben and talk with him about his putter. And he's got this super, I mean, it's still got the same putter, that 8802.
Little Ben.
Yeah.
Little Ben, right?
Little
That's it.
8802
Yeah.
Wilson. And same shaft, same grip and everything from 1984.
Jeez.
Right? He still carries it around. I was like, I can hold this thing? It's amazing.
Wow.
So anyway, I felt it, and I've got a light putter, but Ben has an unbelievably light putter. And everything these days is like heavy putter, heavy putter, heavy putter. One of the greatest putters of all time has got the lightest putter I've ever felt. Now, what he said was really interesting. He said, Parker, when I putted my best, this putter felt incredibly heavy. So the lightest putter that I've ever felt really, really heavy. Now you think about that. If I really get some tight grip pressure, I can really rip this thing up. But if I've got really soft hands and really, this thing feels really, really heavy. So you can just imagine how tension-free he was in his arms, his elbows, his hands, very tension-free to make this really light putter feel very heavy.
Wow, that's cool.
It's a neat like visual to think about. And now with all the heavy putters, it's like, boy, you got to have a lot of tension on that heavy putter to take it back, just to move that object. So, you know, it's always one of those things, like grab a really light putter. Like my putter's really short, which is why it doesn't have a lot of weight. But I told Ben, I was like, when I putted my best, I felt like my putter was really heavy as well. So something interesting to pay attention to as far as tension, grip pressure, all that type of stuff, to be able to really soften everything when you putt. We all feel like it's like, ooh, we just want to hit it, right? And it's like, soften everything up, feel really heavy with that putter.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, neat stuff. It's fun to learn from the legends, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was the man putting.
Yeah, he was incredible.
Parker, thank you. We appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you guys.
Appreciate it.